I never thought a dumb wrestling match in my living room would completely change how I felt about my best friend. But here we are, and honestly, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. So, a little background. My name's Nate, I'm 27, and I live in a tiny, slightly messy apartment in Brooklyn. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I work in graphic design, mostly freelance stuff, which means I spend a lot of time alone, staring at screens and wishing I had more people around. That's where Jamie comes in. Jamie's been my best friend since college. We met during some ridiculous group project neither of us cared about. He's this tall, effortlessly confident guy who always manages to make me laugh in a way I didn't even know I needed. He's got this easy charm and a goofy smile that somehow makes the world feel less heavy. If I'm being honest, I've liked him for years, but I've always kept it buried deep because, well, friends with benefits is not exactly how we started, and I wasn't about to screw that up. Okay, so last Friday night, Jamie crashed at my place after we went out for pizza and some drinks. We didn't have any crazy plans, just a chill night, the kind where you end up talking about nonsense until the early hours. Somehow, the conversation took a turn to wrestling. I don't even know how we got there. Maybe it was the beer talking, maybe it was Jamie's endless competitiveness. Anyway, Jamie suddenly challenged me to a wrestling match. Not like a serious MMA thing or anything, just a goofy, let's see who can pin who kind of deal. I laughed and said, yeah, okay, you're on. The next thing I know, the two of us are on the floor of my living room, limbs tangled, laughing so hard I'm pretty sure I was breathing through my nose only half the time. At first, it was all jokes. Playful slaps, fake grunts, exaggerated moves. But then, something shifted. The laughter didn't stop, but it got quieter, and the way Jamie looked at me in that moment, like I wasn't just some opponent to beat but something else entirely, caught me off guard. I pinned him down and expected him to squirm or surrender, but he just stayed there, looking up at me with this intensity I hadn't seen before. My heart totally sprinted, and for a second, I forgot where we were or what we were even doing. That's when the room felt smaller, the noise of the city outside faded, and it was just me, him, and this weird bubble of tension that wasn't there before. I wasn't sure if I should laugh it off or say something, but before I could decide, Jamie said, "You're not bad at this, you know." I chuckled nervously, but didn't push him away. Maybe I wanted to see where this went. Maybe I'd been waiting for a moment like this and just didn't realize it. Either way, that wrestling match stopped feeling like a joke faster than I expected. And now, I have no idea what's next. And honestly, I'm kind of terrified. But also, maybe just a little excited. Jamie's words hung in the air for a moment. You're not bad at this, you know. Simple, but it felt like more than just a comment about wrestling. I shifted slightly, still on top of him, and caught that slight twitch in his smile. The one that means he's teasing, but also kind of serious. That's Jamie for you, always blurring the lines. I laughed, trying to shake off the weird flutter in my chest. Well, I've had some practice wrestling the dog, so I guess that counts. He rolled his eyes, still pinned beneath me, but clearly enjoying the moment just as much as I was. Yeah, sure. The dog is a worthy opponent. He paused, then added, but I think I'm almost ready to tap. I leaned in just enough to catch his gaze, and suddenly, the room felt a little warmer, the noise outside quieter. Tap out? I asked, my voice lower than usual, and maybe a little too close to his face. Yeah, he said, breath catching just a bit. Or maybe, I don't know, surrender to something else? I blinked, heart racing. Was I imagining things? Or did his eyes go softer? Jamie has always been good at turning a joke into something almost serious. But this felt different. Before I could respond, the sound of my phone buzzing on the coffee table broke the moment. Jamie groaned. Seriously? Is that the pizza place asking if you want dessert again? I grabbed my phone and glanced at the screen. A text from my roommate, Mark. Dude, how long are you hogging the couch? Need to crash after work. I sighed and set the phone down. Mark's right. I should probably let you up. Jamie rolled onto his side, smoothing his hair back, that familiar grin coming back. Fine. But you owe me a real rematch. I sat back, still catching my breath. Yeah. Next time, no rules. We both laughed, but I kept stealing glances at him, suddenly hyper-aware of every little thing. The way his shirt clung to his chest, the subtle lines around his eyes from laughing, the way his fingers tapped lightly on the floor like he was holding back something. It didn't even feel like a friendship wrestling match anymore. I felt like I was seeing him in a new light, like all those years of just being best friends had been a slow build-up to this exact moment. When Jamie finally stood up and stretched, his eyes met mine and held. "You okay?" he asked, voice softer. I nodded, but truthfully, I wasn't. I was buzzing with all these feelings I'd shoved under the just friends label for too long. Yeah, just didn't expect that to happen. He shrugged, walking toward the kitchen. Neither did I. Honestly, I thought you'd crush me. I chuckled, standing up to join him. Maybe I did, but maybe I didn't want to. Jamie looked over his shoulder, that grin still tugging at the corners of his mouth. You're full of surprises, Nate. We settled back on the couch with beers, the earlier tension dissolving into comfortable silence. But I could tell neither of us really wanted to let go of what had just happened. Over the next few days, things between us shifted in the smallest ways. A lingering touch here, a glance that lasted a little too long there. One night, after work, Jamie texted me out of the blue. Want to hang out? No wrestling this time, I promise. I told him sure, and when he arrived, he brought that same easy smile, but with a new vulnerability in his eyes. We ended up talking for hours about everything and nothing. About fears, about regrets, about the future. At one point, Jamie looked at me and said, I never told you this, but I've always wondered what it would be like if we were more than friends. I laughed nervously but felt my throat tighten. Me too. I thought I was the only one. The honesty between us that night was something I didn't know I needed. It felt like a door finally opening after years of tiptoeing around feelings that were there all along. But it wasn't all easy. I kept thinking about what this meant for us. Were we risking the friendship? Could we handle the change? And what about the fear? Fear of getting hurt, of losing what we had. One afternoon, a week after our wrestling match, we met at a quiet coffee shop. Jamie was already there, nursing a cup of black coffee, looking serious in a way that made my stomach flip. I've been thinking, he said, eyes fixed on the cup, about us, about what happened. And I don't want to rush or mess this up, but I also don't want to pretend it didn't mean something. I nodded, taking a deep breath. Yeah, me neither. He finally looked up, his gaze steady. So maybe we try this, see where it goes. No expectations, just us. It was terrifying, exciting, and exactly what I wanted, even if I didn't say it out loud. All I could do was smile and say, I'd like that. That wrestling match started as a joke, but it opened something between us that I can't ignore. Whatever comes next, I know one thing for sure. I'm not ready to go back to pretending. Not anymore. We agreed to take it slow, no pressure, just seeing where things might go. Sounds reasonable, right? But, of course, when feelings get involved, nothing really sticks to the plan. The next few days were this weird mix of excitement and awkwardness. Jamie and I were still the same friends, but suddenly, everything felt charged with this unspoken something. Like every glance or touch carried more weight than before. At one point, I caught myself replaying him, brushing a stray hair behind his ear, and damn, it made me rethink why I'd spent so long pretending I didn't want this. One evening, we met up for dinner at our usual spot. This tiny Italian place with terrible lighting, but the best carbonara in the city. We slid into our booth, and for the first time, there was this moment of hesitation, like we both knew the conversation was going somewhere new, but weren't sure where. Jamie broke the silence. So how are you feeling about all this? I raised an eyebrow, half smiling. You mean besides the fact that I'm freaking out a little? He laughed, that easy sound I'd missed more than I realized. Yeah, that. Freaking out is normal, right? Normal for me, probably. I'm good at overthinking. He nodded, eyes warm. Me too. But honestly, I think that's kind of why I want to try this. We know each other better than anyone else, and maybe that's worth the risk. I swallowed hard because, yeah, I wanted to believe that too. I'm scared, Jamie. Scared of ruining us. Jamie reached across the table, his hand brushing against mine. The contact was electric, and all my fears melted into something more hopeful. Me too, but maybe it's scarier not to try. That night, walking him back to his place, the city felt quieter, like it was holding its breath with us. When we got to his door, neither of us wanted to say goodbye. "Want to come in for a bit?" he asked, voice low. I nodded before my brain could catch up. Inside, his apartment was cozy. Soft light, books stacked everywhere, the scent of something cinnamony in the air. We sat close on the couch, the space between us shrinking until it disappeared. Jamie looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time, and I felt the same. It wasn't just friendship anymore. It was something deeper, fragile, yet electrifying. He leaned in slowly, and I met him halfway. The kiss was soft, tentative at first, like we were both testing the waters but hoping to dive in. My heart raced, and I could feel every barrier I'd built falling away piece by piece. After a while, we pulled apart just enough to look at each other, breath mingling. "Wow," I said, laughing nervously. Jamie smiled, cheeks flushed. "Yeah, wow." From that moment, something shifted. The wrestling match that started as a joke was now this bridge to something real, messy, and beautiful. We began spending more time together, dates that were less about hanging out and more about discovering each other. Sometimes we talked for hours, other times we just sat in comfortable silence. But it wasn't all smooth. There were moments when I doubted myself, when old fears crept in. One night, after a minor argument about plans for the weekend, I found myself spiraling. Was I really ready for this? Could we handle it? Jamie caught me staring off into space and without a word, pulled me into a hug. "Hey," he said softly, "we're figuring this out." Together. That simple reassurance grounded me. It reminded me why I took the leap in the first place. A couple of weeks in, we decided to be more open about us. The first time I introduced Jamie as my boyfriend to a group of friends was terrifying. I could feel every eye on us, waiting for a reaction. But Jamie squeezed my hand, and I realized that no matter what anyone else thought, this felt right. The hardest part has been unlearning years of just friends habits, like when we accidentally called each other by our old nicknames, or when I realized I wanted to share stupid little moments with him the way I used to with other friends. But now it felt different, more intimate. One lazy Sunday, we ended up in a park, sprawled on a blanket with takeout and music. Jamie traced circles on my arm, and I caught myself leaning into his touch without hesitation. "Do you regret it?" he asked suddenly. I blinked. "Regret what?" "Us. This whole thing." I smiled, heartful. "Not once." He pressed a kiss to my temple, and I knew we still had a long way to go. There would be challenges, moments of doubt, maybe even heartbreak. But for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Because sometimes, the best things start as a joke you never meant to take seriously. And sometimes, those jokes turn into everything you didn't know you were looking for. Things started to feel more real, more permanent, I guess. Like the kind of real where you don't just think, "Oh, this is fun," but where you start picturing a future that actually includes someone else. With Jamie, that future didn't seem like a joke anymore. It felt possible. We had this unspoken rhythm by then. Little routines that made me realize how much I'd missed having someone like him around. Like our Friday night tradition of ordering takeout, binge watching terrible reality TV, and stealing the last slice of pizza from each other. Or how he'd send me goofy texts during the day just to remind me he was thinking about me. It was all these small moments that built up into something bigger. But of course, nothing worth having ever feels completely easy. One weekend, Jamie invited me to his family's place upstate. He'd told me a little about them before, how close they were, how they didn't really care about labels, just about happiness, but meeting them was still nerve-wracking. What if they didn't like me? What if I said something dumb and blew it all? When I got there, Jamie's mom greeted me with the kind of warm hug that made me instantly feel like I belonged. His dad gave me a firm handshake and a nod that felt like a silent welcome. And his little sister? She was a riot, immediately teasing me about stealing Jamie's attention. The weekend was filled with hikes, late-night talks by the fire, and the kind of genuine connection that made me think, maybe I could be part of this family. Jamie seemed relaxed, happier than I'd ever seen him, and that made my chest tighten in the best way. On the last night, after everyone had gone to bed, Jamie and I sat outside on the porch swing, wrapped in blankets against the cool air. "I'm glad you came," he said, his voice low. "Me too," I replied, tracing patterns on his hand. He hesitated for a moment, then turned to look at me. "I know this is new, and maybe scary, but I want you to know I'm serious about us." I swallowed hard, heart pounding. "I am too." He smiled, that slow, genuine smile that made me want to kiss him all over again. "Good. Because I don't want to go back to pretending anymore." I leaned in, our lips meeting in a kiss that felt like a promise. A promise that whatever came next, we'd face it together. But the real test came when we got back to the city. I work from home mostly, which is great for focus, but terrible for social interaction. Jamie, on the other hand, is in sales and constantly out meeting new people. Our schedules started to feel out of sync, and I noticed the first cracks. Not huge, but enough to make me sit up and pay attention. One evening, he canceled our dinner plans last minute. His voice on the phone sounded tired and distracted. "Sorry, Nate, work's been crazy. Can we reschedule?" I forced a smile, though he couldn't see it. "Of course." Later that night, I found myself scrolling through our old texts, the ones from before we started dating, and felt a pang of nostalgia mixed with something like sadness. Was this the start of us unraveling? I tried to push the thought away, but it lingered. A few days later, Jamie and I met for coffee. I decided to bring it up gently. "Hey, is everything okay? You seem off lately." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Yeah, it's just work stuff. Lots of pressure, and I hate dragging it home." I nodded, wanting to be supportive, but also feeling a little left out. "I get it. But don't forget to breathe, okay? And maybe don't forget about me in the process." He looked at me then, eyes soft but serious. "I'm sorry if I've been distant. I don't want to lose what we have." "Me neither," I said honestly. We sat there for a while, just talking and reminding each other why this was worth fighting for. That night, when I got home, I found a message from Jamie. "You free tomorrow? Let's just hang out. No distractions." I smiled, feeling that flutter of hope again. The next day was perfect in its simplicity. We took a long walk through Prospect Park, talking about everything and nothing, holding hands like it wasn't the most natural thing in the world. Later, back at my place, we cooked dinner together, laughing when we accidentally burned the garlic bread. It was in those quiet, imperfect moments that I realized love isn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. It's about showing up again and again, even when things get messy. Weeks turned into months, and we kept learning how to be together, how to fight and make up, how to navigate the weird in-between spaces. Jamie's wrestling challenge had been a joke, but it broke down walls I didn't know I had. Now, every time we toss each other onto the floor for a playful skirmish, it's a reminder. Sometimes, the best things start when you least expect them. And honestly, I'm looking forward to whatever comes next. You know how sometimes life throws you these curveballs that seem small at first, but end up shifting everything? That's kind of how things went with Jamie and me, right when I thought we were settling comfortably into this new us. It started with something stupid, a text. He sent me a message late one night, just after I'd fallen asleep. "Can we talk tomorrow? Face to face?" No context, no explanation. Just that. Of course, I spent the entire night tossing and turning, imagining every possible scenario. Had I screwed up somehow? Was this one of those "we need to figure stuff out" talks? The kind I'd been terrified of since we made things official? When we met the next day, Jamie looked different, more serious, maybe even a little vulnerable. We sat at that same coffee shop where we'd started opening up before, the one with the slightly lopsided tables and the barista who always spelled my name wrong. He took a deep breath and said, "I've been offered a big opportunity at work. A promotion, actually, but it means moving to Chicago." My heart sank. Chicago? Wow, that's huge. I tried to keep my voice steady, even though it felt like the world was tilting. Yeah, and I want it. I want us. But I don't know how to make that work without losing everything. We sat in silence for a while, the noise of the cafe fading into the background. I wanted to say, we'll figure it out, but the words felt fragile, like I was promising something I wasn't sure I could keep. What do you want to do? I finally asked, trying to sound calm. Jamie shrugged. I don't want to lose you, but I also don't want to hold myself back. I guess I need to know if you'd be willing to try long distance. Long distance. The phrase felt foreign, like a challenge I hadn't expected. We'd barely just started, and now this. I don't know, I admitted honestly. I've never done that before, but I'm willing to try if you are. His eyes softened. Me too. I just don't want to lose what we have. We agreed to give it a shot. Call it naive optimism or just stubborn hope, but neither of us was ready to throw in the towel. The next few weeks were a roller coaster. Video calls that lasted late into the night. Texts filled with inside jokes. The kind of conversations that made the miles shrink just a little. But there were also moments of loneliness. Times when I caught myself reaching for my phone, hoping for a message that didn't come right away. One afternoon, I was walking through the park, phone pressed to my ear, listening to Jamie's voice talk about his new responsibilities in the crazy Chicago weather. I stopped by a bench, my heart aching with a mix of pride and fear. This was love in a different form, less physical, more mental, and damn hard. Then there was the weekend he surprised me by showing up unannounced. I was at my apartment when I heard a knock, and there he was, suitcase in hand, grinning like a kid sneaking into a party. I couldn't wait, he said simply. That weekend felt like a lifeline. We cooked together, rewatched our favorite movies, and even had another wrestling match. This time more playful, with less tension and more laughter. It reminded me of how it all started. But reality hit hard when he left again. The goodbye was quiet but heavy. Watching him walk away, suitcase in hand, felt like a punch to the gut. Months passed. We both adjusted to the new rhythm. Calls, visits, constant planning for the next time we'd see each other. It wasn't easy. There were fights fueled by frustration, missed calls, and the ache of distance. But there were also moments of clarity, like when Jamie sent me a photo of the Chicago skyline, captioned simply, "Waiting for you." One night, during a particularly difficult week, I found myself pacing my apartment, thoughts spinning. The uncertainty of it all was overwhelming. What if this didn't work? What if the distance broke us? Then Jamie called, his voice steady and warm, like a lifeline. "Hey, want to hear a crazy idea?" "Always," I said, heart hopeful. I was thinking, what if you moved here? We could find a place together. Start fresh. I blinked. The idea so wild it took a moment to sink in. "Are you serious?" I asked. "Completely. I know it's a huge step, but I want this. I want us." I felt a smile spread across my face. You know what? I want that too. It wasn't a decision I made lightly. Leaving my city, my life, all the familiar pieces was terrifying. But the thought of building something real with Jamie, worth the risk. Over the next few months, we planned, packed, and said goodbye to the life we'd known separately. When I finally arrived in Chicago, Jamie was waiting at the airport, arms open wide. We've been here a few weeks now, navigating new routines, new neighborhoods, and the strange thrill of starting over together. It's messy and unpredictable, but it's ours. I never thought a simple wrestling match between friends would lead me here, standing side by side with the person I love in a city that's as unfamiliar as it is full of promise. And honestly, I wouldn't trade it for the world. Settling into Chicago was a wild ride. I won't lie, it was exciting, terrifying, and completely overwhelming all at once. Leaving behind everything I knew, my familiar streets, favorite coffee shops, and that tiny apartment in Brooklyn was harder than I expected. But having Jamie waiting for me made it feel like the right move. His place was a cozy two-bedroom in a neighborhood we both liked, with big windows that let in the afternoon sun and a couch that quickly became our favorite spot. Moving in together was a whole different kind of adventure. Suddenly, it wasn't just about sharing dinners or movie nights. It was about navigating space, habits, and the little quirks that come with living with someone else. Like how Jamie insists on arranging the books on the shelves by color. Not something I ever cared about, but now I find myself doing it too. Or how I like to make playlists for us on lazy Sundays, and he pretends he's not obsessed with them. We had our first real fight a couple of weeks after I arrived. We'd been cooped up during one of those rare, gray, rainy Chicago weekends, and tempers flared over something ridiculous. Who left the kitchen light on, of all things. I just don't get why you can't turn it off when you leave the room. Jamie said, arms crossed. I rolled my eyes. Maybe because I'm not a robot programmed to obsess over lights? It escalated more than it should have, and afterward we sat in silence, both kind of miserable. But that's the thing about us. Even in the moments we stumble, we talk it out. We don't let the distance between us grow, even if sometimes it feels like a daily challenge. Later that night, Jamie came over, sat next to me on the couch, and said softly, "I'm sorry. I don't want to fight. Not with you." I squeezed his hand. "Me neither. I guess living together means learning how to argue without breaking each other, huh?" He smiled, that familiar, reassuring smile. Exactly. Beyond the small battles, there were so many moments that made it clear this was more than just a fling or a comfortable friendship. Like the time we got caught in a sudden downpour walking home, laughing and sprinting for cover, soaked to the bone but not caring. Or when Jamie surprised me by cooking my favorite dish, even though he swore he'd never be good in the kitchen. One night, after a long day, I plopped down on the couch, exhausted and a little overwhelmed by work deadlines and the general chaos of starting over. Jamie joined me, sitting close enough that our legs touched. He looked at me, eyes kind and steady. "You okay?" I nodded, leaning into him. "Yeah, just a lot." He wrapped his arm around my shoulders. "We'll get through it, together." That word, together, felt like a lifeline. It was everything I'd wanted, but never dared to say aloud. And it wasn't just the big moments. It was the small, everyday stuff that cemented us. Sharing playlists, arguing over the thermostat, spontaneous dance parties in the kitchen, and Sunday mornings tangled in blankets with coffee, and half-hearted attempts at making pancakes. But even as things felt right, I couldn't ignore the lingering moments of doubt that bubbled up every now and then. What if this move didn't work out? What if the distance from my family and old friends became too much? What if we realized we were better as friends after all? One evening, as we sat watching a documentary, I found myself blurting out, "Do you ever worry about us? About what happens if this doesn't work?" Jamie paused the show and turned to me, serious. "All the time. But I think that's normal. What matters is that we choose to keep trying, that we don't take each other for granted." I nodded, feeling lucky to have someone who was willing to face the uncertainty with me. And the truth, despite the challenges, the awkward moments, and the fears, I wouldn't trade this for anything. Because love, real love, isn't perfect. It's messy, complicated, and sometimes downright scary. But it's also the best thing I've ever had. The wrestling match started as a joke, a silly dare between two guys who never imagined it would lead here. Now, as I sit beside Jamie, watching the city lights twinkle outside our window, I realize that sometimes the best things come when you least expect them, and sometimes you just have to take the leap. There's this quiet moment we share sometimes, usually late at night, when the city hums just outside our window and the world feels like it's paused, even if only for a little while. It's not flashy or dramatic. No big declarations or sweeping gestures. Just us, sitting side by side, maybe with a cup of tea or nowhere to be. Last night was one of those moments. We were on the couch, the glow from the streetlights, painting soft shadows across Jamie's face. He looked over at me with that easy smile I know so well and said, "You know, I was thinking about that first wrestling match. How it started as a joke but ended up meaning everything." I laughed softly, remembering how ridiculous it all seemed then. "Yeah, who'd have thought a dumb game would change our lives?" He reached out, fingers brushing mine. "I'm glad it did, because it brought me to you." That simple sentence made my chest tighten in the best way. I realized how much we'd grown, From friends who were scared to admit what they felt, to partners who chose each other every day, through the uncertainties and the challenges. It hasn't been perfect, and it probably never will be. But that's what makes it real. We've built something grounded in honesty, in patience, and in a kind of love that isn't about grand moments, but about showing up, again and again, for each other. I squeezed Jamie's hand and said, "Me too." "I'm glad it did, and I can't wait to see where we go from here." He leaned in, resting his forehead against mine, and in that quiet closeness, I felt a deep sense of peace. The kind that comes from knowing you found someone who sees you, truly sees you, and wants to be there through it all. Sometimes life surprises you, throws you a joke that turns into your favorite story. And sometimes, the best parts aren't the moments you plan, but the ones that catch you off guard, with a simple touch, a shared laugh, or a late-night conversation that lingers long after the words are said. I don't know what the future holds, but right now with Jamie beside me, it feels full of promise. And that's more than enough.